Daddy, can you read me a bedtime story before I go to bed?
No, son. Well,
Please?
fine. I guess I'll have to make it, let's see, I'll better make it a good story. What about the one out of my favorite book?
No, Dad, I don't want to hear your version of the Notebook again, okay?
Son, I was talking about the Bible, though I do love Nicholas Sparks. Let's see here. I guess I'm going to have to make it a good story, huh?
Yeah.
One of the greatest ever told.
Yeah.
And you'll have to use your imagination. After all, that's how stories come to life.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll use my imagination. I think my imagination's a little uglier these days, Dad.
That happens when you hit puberty, son. Once upon a time, there was a young man. A boy, really. And he was about your age. And his name was David. And David used to play his harp while he was watching his father's sheep. Kind of like how you play your Game Boy when I tell you to rake the leaves. Anyway, one day, David was out playing his harp. Playing it just as peacefully as could be. And he was playing his harp, minding his own business, when all of a sudden, a lion came out of nowhere and tried to eat him. And that's what's going to happen to you if you keep shirking your chores.
No, wait, what happened to David?
Oh,
David!
Well, he valiantly fought off the lion. With a slingshot. You see, this kind of thing would happen all the time, and David would fight off the lions to keep the sheep safe. And even though David was the smallest and the youngest of all his brothers, he was chosen to be the next king over all Israel. He was even anointed, which is kind of like being knighted. But at that time, Israel was off at war. They were fighting their neighboring enemies, the evil Philistines. But one day, David had a little errand. David's father had a little errand for David to run.
Oh, wait, okay, I know this part. Okay, this is where David brings some gummy bears to his brothers at camp, and they eat them all, and they get really big, and they go into Oprah, and they cry a lot because they're so big.
No, son. Actually, he took real food, not gummy bears, but real food to his brothers at the battlefield. And when he got there, he saw on the enemy side the tallest, meanest, strongest man in the whole world.
Abraham Lincoln?
407 years ago.
Well, actually, his name was Goliath. You see, he wanted to make slaves, not free them. And, well, Goliath was tall, so you got that right. But, you see, Goliath was making fun of the Israelite army and the Israelite God. And David, he just wouldn't have that. So he decided to go talk to King Saul, the tallest of all the Israelites, to ask for permission to go and fight Goliath.
Skip this part. Go to the cool part, okay?
Fine. It's your bedtime story anyway. So David gets to the battlefield, hits Goliath on the head with a rock, and Goliath falls down dead. And then David chops off Goliath's head just to make sure he's dead, and stands on top of him and goes, "Hey, you guys!"
I know what comes next. Okay, and then Goliath rises from the dead. Israel looking for his head. Steals all the Israelites' gummy bears.
Oh, okay, hold on. No, son, you've been watching way too much TV. Goliath stayed good and dead. His head got chopped off, remember? So why would he want gummy bears anyway? He couldn't eat. They're delicious. Goliath stayed good and dead. So with Goliath dead, King Saul, the tallest of all the Israelites, decided to make David his musical assistant. And David would play his harp, keep Saul from getting mad.
That's
Melodious.
boring. No, that's boring. Get to the good part.
Fine. So, David would play the harp, keep Saul from getting mad. But then Saul gets mad anyway, so he throws a spear at David by the distance, and David runs away. And then Jonathan, Saul's son, goes and finds a bunch of random dudes, and then David and Jonathan become friends, which is like, yay. And then David has to run away, because Saul's been trying to kill him, which makes Jonathan really sad. Then King Saul decides to have himself killed, but his servant boy is too chicken to do it. So King Saul kills himself, and when King Saul dead, David becomes king over all Israel. That was a good thing, but that's when things start to get really messy.
Okay, Dad, I didn't get any of that. Can you go do that entire last part again?
You haven't been paying attention to the story?
Well, no, I was just too fast. Okay, I know. Just go back to the beginning.
All right, son. In the beginning, there was the Word.
Word.
And the Word...
Oh, way too far back. Okay. Go back to the part where David kills King Saul with King Arthur and Lancelot and Guinevere.
That's the round table. That's the middle table. Talk about solo.
Well, okay, hold on. Not sure how Monty Python got in there. You're the one who'll be watching that. I've got an idea. We got it all mixed up. Why don't we straighten it out by rewinding a little bit?
All right. Rewind.
So, David played the harp. He saw getting mad, but the song is not ending. So he throws Spirit David. And this is that everyone's playing. And Jonathan's talking because I ran dudes, and then David shot his friends, which is like, yay! But then David has to relate the song to come down, and Jonathan's really sad. Then King Solomon is like, having just killed me, so he's new. So then King Solomon is king over all Israel. You think that was a good thing, but that is when things started to get really messy. One day, David is on his palace roof, and he's looking out over his entire kingdom. And all of a sudden, he sees a naked woman bathing.
Oh, okay. That's gonna be gross. I don't.
Listen, son, you have to understand, a good man will always look away.
From that, yeah.
But David didn't. Instead, he looked and looked. And he realized that that woman's name was Bathsheba, which is a good joke in and of itself. But Bathsheba was already married. She had a husband named Uriah. He was a soldier in the Israelite army, and they were off at war. So with Uriah gone, as soon as David saw Bathsheba, he wanted to marry her.
Wait, okay. Dad, everybody knows guys was like girls who have husbands.
I know, son, but listen, this is right out of the Bible. So David and Bathsheba, they decide to, hang out.
Hey, what's up?
They get together and, you're a little young, they play patty cake. And after the patty cake, somehow, very mysteriously and completely unrelated, Bathsheba gets pregnant. You never can tell, son. So David does not know what to do. So he decides that he's got to send for Uriah to come back from the battlefield to be with his wife. But Uriah is such a good soldier that he won't do it. He sleeps out on the porch all by himself. So Uriah is alone, and Bathsheba's alone, and David is alone, and David still doesn't know what to do. And then he's got to kill Uriah! But he's the king. He can't do it himself, because that would be a major no-no. So instead, he sends Uriah back out to the front lines of the battlefield with a sticky note on Uriah's back, telling the general to let Uriah run out all by himself. Well, Uriah runs out all by himself. Somehow Uriah does not notice the thousands of other guys not with him. That's how he gets killed. I mean, if you ask me, he kind of deserved it. So, in all their mourning and sobbing for Uriah's death, well, David and Bathsheba decide to get married.
What happened next?
Well, next, the prophet Nathan came along. You see, Nathan knew what David had done. He knew how wicked David had been. So he decided to give David a long talk about sheep and neighbors. And at the end of the talk, David starts getting really mad at what Nathan is saying. And then all of a sudden Nathan says, "You're the man!"
Hey!
Except it wasn't in the good way. No! Something got lost in translation there. So David starts to cry. And then Nathan tells David that there will always be fighting in his home because of what he has done. Always a sword in his house. So then David cries some more.
What happened to Bathsheba's baby?
Well, God decided since they've been so wicked not to let them have it. So then David cried some more.
So, James will be shepherd boy, the smallest one of those, speaking as those devices, only tell me to don't surprise me, and take like that?
Pretty much. But there's a lot more to David's life that I probably shouldn't be telling you till you're older.
But Dad, I'm almost 3.
I'm almost 3.
I'm practicing for when you can understand me, son. But you know what? Nathan's prophecy, it came true. There was always fighting in David's house. His sons would try and rise up and overthrow his kingdom. Some of his kids would kill his other kids. There's all kinds of messed up stuff that happened. But, you know what? Even though David did all those things, those are pretty terrible things. The Bible still says that he was a man after God's own heart. She tells me that no matter what kind of bad things you think you've done, God can still use you for wonderful things.
That's a great story, Dad.
It's just one part of the greatest story ever told.